to introduce us?
Hi, Sergey. How are you? Thanks for making
Great.
the time today. First of all, I'd like to welcome all our guests who have joined today's webinar. The main focus of today's introduction is the importance and why staff should adhere to the data protection law within the UAE, the PDPL. And this is based on the UAE Federal Law 45 of 21. If we look at the topics which we'll be covering throughout today, we'll be giving you a short introduction, a bit of a background through to data protection, an overview of the UAE's data protection law, who should attend all the training, which is presented by both Nadia and ourselves. What does the curriculum entail? What does it basically cover when you send your students to us for training, as well as a bit of an overview of international certification. I'm happy that this presentation, or not this presentation, this webinar today is basically presented both by Nadia and Data Privacy Group. Nadia has been in this industry for over 40 years. They haven't only been training in the UAE, but in the complete GCC. I've been acquainted with them since 2004, where they mainly focus on recruitment and training. They focus on qualifying corporate staff, your staff, so that they are qualified to adhere to all the requirements as stipulated by the UAE laws, as well as furthermore, they assist career candidates in developing their own careers. From our side, from Data Privacy Group, we have a few years of experience. Since 2018, we've started in the industry, focusing on data privacy. We have offices in the US, we have offices in the European Union, we have offices in the CIS, and we have a new office now in United Arab Emirates, in the Emirate of Dubai. It's my pleasure today also introducing our CEO and leader of today's webinar, Sir Hay. Everybody always asks, how do you pronounce his name? It's Hay, Sir Hay. If a person looks at his background, extensive training, you can have a look at the screen right now, extensive background in data privacy, educated in Germany, extensive training experience. We've trained over 2,000 students of the past few years. And with that, I hand over through to you, Sir Hay. Thank you for your time, and it's my pleasure.
Great. Thank you for intro to the webinar, Craig. And let me start with the first point of our topic, which is introduction to the UAE personal data protection law. Before we start with the covering the law and discussing its applicability, I must say that it's often believed that data privacy is the same as information security, and I must say that privacy is not equal to confidentiality or information security. So when we speak about data privacy, we speak about the effects that the processing of personal data might have on data subjects, and this processing might be illegal, but also might be legal. I mean, might be done by your company without any breach of data breach. So, for instance, when we speak about information privacy, we usually deal with the topics of consent, of privacy notice, of cookie banners, of discussing with data subjects what purposes this information could be used for, etc. But when we speak to someone about information security, we always discuss the topics like access limitation and distribution of the privileges and logging of the activities of users, screening while employment, and things like that. Of course, we have an intersection between those two areas when we try to protect from unauthorized use personal data. And on this intersection, we have a lot of topics concerning data breaches and the technical and organizational measures we should do to prevent someone from accessing personal data that was entrusted to us, or from altering it, or from losing it. But those are two different fields. I must also say that data privacy deals, in spite of the title of the law, which is Personal Data Protection Law, it might be, people might think, okay, it's about protecting data, but actually, as my colleague Rowena Fielding says, it's about protecting people against unwanted and adverse effects of using someone's data. So there is nothing criminal with using personal data until this data does not harm individuals and until you abide by the rules. So why we should discuss the UAE personal data protection law, the federal one that covers all the Emirates. The first reason is that the companies that are established in the UAE have to abide to the law. There is one small exception. This exception is for companies that are established in the free zones where much more stricter data protection rules apply. For instance, in Dubai International Financial Center or Abu Dhabi Global Market, there are more strict, more serious legislations and for those companies who have to comply with the DFC law or IDGM regulations, they don't have to abide by the federal law. But all other companies, including companies like ours that are established outside those free zones, for instance, in free zones that does not have any data protection laws, they would have to comply with the federal law. So this is the first reason. For those of you who represent the Emirates companies, this is the law of the land, and you will have to process personal data in accordance with this law. And another reason is when you represent the company that is outside the UAE. For instance, you are not controller or data processor inside the European Union or inside the UAE. Sorry, I deliver training also on the GDPR, and I also always say European Union sometimes, even when I speak about the UAE. Sorry, excuse me. Yeah, even if you're outside the UAE, you still might be in the scope of the law, because sometimes you process personal data of data subjects, of individuals who are inside the United Arab Emirates. So in case you answer to this question yes, then the UAE law number 45 applies to your processing operations. If you don't have establishment inside the Emirates, if you don't have personal data of someone who is in the Emirates, and I'm not speaking only about citizens of the Emirates, we speak about everyone who is on the territory of the Emirates, even tourist, even person resident without citizenship or citizen inside the Emirates, then you might be excluded from the application of the law. You don't have to comply, since you are not the Emirates company having no Emirates personal data. But if one of those conditions is true, then you will need to think about putting some organizational, technical, and legal measures into place. So, what are the provisions of the law? Actually, we drafted the first steps at one of our first webinars devoted to the UAE personal data protection law. I drafted those 8 major steps the companies have to do to be prepared for this new privacy legislation. The first and the most important ones is actually know your data. List all purposes that you use the data for, map it to information systems, to categories of personal data, what kind of information is used for what purposes. and you'll be able to comply with the Article 7 of the PDPL, which is exercise quite common right now because of the GDPR and Article 30 of the GDPR that requires companies to have ROPA in place. ROPA is Register of Processing Activities. So basically, it's the same ROPA that is required by the UAE Personal Data Protection Law. The second step would be minimizing data collection, limiting storage of data by establishing schedules for data deletion. It would be Article 5. I think this is the most problematic requirement of any data protection laws because previously our business had this approach to personal data that keeping data as long as possible and keeping as much data as possible, collecting as much data as possible would be of an asset to the company. But what personal legislation changes, it actually changes this approach. Now you need to change the attitude from data as an asset to data as a risk. And if data is a risk, then you need to avoid collecting it. You need to limit its use and delete it as soon as possible. Then the third step for companies would be implementing state-of-the-art information security measures because consent, privacy notice, and all other legal part of the compliance would be useless without protecting the data from unauthorized access, from unauthorized laws or alteration. Then we need to abide by the rules of international data transfers. As many privacy laws, the federal UAE law requires you to have data transfers mechanism in place to transfer the data outside the UAE. And this transfer is also takes place also when you use some cloud services outside the UAE. For instance, if you process personal data with Google spreadsheets or you upload it to some cloud-based CRM, these are data transfers, and you'll need to have contractual and consent mechanism in place to use those applications, to use those tools. Then describe all activities involving personal data in privacy notice according to Article 13 of the PDPL. Assess risks for data privacy. Conduct the process called personal data. DPIA, Data Protection Impact Assessment, how the processing of personal data affects data subjects, affects individuals, and based on that, you might find some necessary action items to be included in your project, and then appoint or outsource data protection officer's role. Actually, our company is also a provider of this data protection officer's role as a subcontractor. And the last but not the least, we need to build the processes to respond to data subject rights. So when people ask us to delete personal data or access their personal data, we need processes in place because those inquiries won't be, those inquiries will have definite deadlines, and you will need to meet those deadlines to avoid fines and other sanctions. So to cope with those requirements, you basically need to start with training your staff, allocating resources to data protection program, and assigning responsibilities inside your organization. What person would be keeping register of processing activities, who reports what to this register, what kind of procedure is created to use personal data for different purposes, from different purposes than the ones the data was collected for, what is the procedure to get a consent from individuals, etc. So basically, we'll speak right now. We'll speak about one of the preconditions is about training your staff, being able to comply with the PDPL requires you to have people who know what is personal data, when the law is applicable, when it's not, what are the roles and responsibilities between data controllers and processors, what are the legal grounds for processing personal data. Maybe consent is not the only solution. There might be some other reasons for using personal data. Transparency requirement means basically privacy notices and privacy policies published on your web pages and accessible on your on-site premises, using other data protection principles like purpose limitation, data minimization, storage limitation, and as I said, we will need to fulfill data subject rights. We would need to respond to the requests. So the topics about the rights, when we have to reply, when we don't, what are the deadlines, what kind of information should be deleted, which is not required to be deleted, etc. Then the last two elements of the training would be assessing the risk, conducting DPIA, data protection impact assessment, and the rules for international data transfer. And I mapped, let's map those parts of the data privacy curriculum to the most common professions in the company. So I listed the key roles here, like DPO, which is data protection officer, and legal, sales, marketing, HR, software development, if you have, IT, and information security, and the last column would be for all staff, for every employee in your company. So let's use this. Use this syllabus and map what kind of knowledge and skills are necessary from what officers in your company. And we will start with the notion of personal data. Basically, the answer, the question, what is personal data, is quite tricky because it depends on the context. In our UAE personal data protection course, we have the diagrams explaining the elements of personal data, and it's not only a passport number or Emirates ID. A lot of relevant information is also included into the scope of personal data, and it depends on the identifiability of data subjects. And when attending our course, we would break down this definition of personal data, and you would learn all the requirements, all the criteria for classifying information as personal. So basically, we DPO and legal staff would need to know this definition, this concept of personal data in detail. Sales and marketing are also required to know it, but I would say that understanding the general concept, being able to classify the data that they work with as personal would be enough for them. HR is the same, so personal data, they need to understand what information is personal in case of recruiting someone or managing the relations, the employee relations. software developers, basically they need quite in detail understanding, quite comprehensive understanding of the concept of personal data as IT and information security people, because they would need to classify, okay, we have this database with user IDs. Is this personal or not? Should we apply personal data protection rules, or we just need to follow our generic information security standards? So, and basically all other staff would need to understand the concept of personal data on the basic level. It's more than just name and last name. They need to understand that everything is what is connected to this name and last name and user ID is also personal data. But in our GDPR and UAE privacy-aware course, this module takes not longer than 25 minutes. For all staff for those training, and with in the full data protection course, in the full data privacy professional course, we usually it takes around 1 hour or 1.5 hours to cover the concept of personal data, of anonymous data, and the processes that are related to personal data, like anonymization and pseudonymization. So then let's move to the topic of scope and application. Basically, those topics are required, the good knowledge of those topics is required from DPO and legal professionals, and that's it. I would say that it would be useful if you do some outsource development, software development, if you deal with personal data of other companies, then software developers might need this understanding that some other data privacy laws might be applicable to this situation, but it would be more than enough. So in any data protection, modern data protection law, we have two basic roles, which are data controller and data processor. And we need to understand our role. Almost every employee should understand those roles on the basic level, but DPO and legal professionals would need to understand not only the definition of data controller, but also the situation when you are joint controller with someone and the implications of this control over data processing. So I would put this this for everyone except for DPO and legal professionals. And controller-processor relations are actually very much related. So this is the topic about what kind of contract should be between data controllers and data processors, what should be included into those contracts, what are requirements about due diligence of our data processors. So I would say that actually I probably need to delete this. No, I will. Yeah, I'll keep IT staff and technical specialists out of this topic. You don't need to train them with understanding of the of those relations, but all other officers, especially the ones that work with personal data, that sometimes subscribe to some cloud services, they would need to understand the obligations of the cloud service that they subscribe to. So a legal ground, it's very important topic because actually consent is one of the legal grounds, but it's not the only one. And I think even in the UAE, it would not be the most popular one. There are more than a dozen other legal grounds that could be applicable in this situation. And this is a crucial topic for legal professionals. We would need to cover this topic to sales, marketing, and the HR, because those professions are not only processing personal data, but also collecting personal data. And you need to get this legal ground for the processing before the processing starts. And the basic understanding about the legal grounds would be required from every employee in your company. So let's move on to transparency of the processing. If this is the requirement saying that, okay, you need to inform data subjects, individuals, about what processes are taking place with their personal data, what are data recipients, what is the period for keeping this data, when the data is deleted, and things like that. And since DPO and legal are involved into drafting your privacy notice, and sales is often a point of contact with data subjects. HR is another point of contact with data subjects, with our employees and our candidates. So they need to understand this requirement. They also need to be prepared to deliver this information to data subjects in case they request. Yeah, and I would say that the basic understanding of the following principles, data protection principles, I did not list all of them, just this lawfulness principle, that's transparency principle, and 3 more principles as purpose limitation, actually saying that you are not allowed to use information for other purposes than the one that you declared at the time of the collection. Data minimization, as keeping information limited to the purpose and not collecting some additional information without clear need for it. And storage limitation, which is about deletion and schedules for deletion of personal data. So these are the topics that are crucial for our software development teams and information security and IT teams, because these are the people that would be necessary, would be executing our requirement, our deletion schedules. But also, of course, it's important for DPO or legal professional in our company. And as a basic requirement, don't collect information you don't need, don't record it if you got this information and it's no longer necessary for the purpose. So these basic rules are the understanding of those basic rules is required from every employee, especially employees working with personal data. So I would, when speaking about the rights topic, we need to include one more department. We could take this all stuff column and actually duplicate it to oops, sorry, I duplicated the whole table. Just a moment. Yeah, which is support. So we have people, probably we have some support people that help our users, our customers, maybe our internal data subjects, our workers, when working with personal data. And usually support is the first point that gets the data subject access requests, the request for data deletion, for access, for correction of personal data. And it's crucial for them to recognize those requests, because if they are not able to recognize, okay, this is the request under the PDPL, we might lose we might lose a lot. We might lose our deadlines. We would not be able to answer within a month or 15-day period. Unfortunately, we don't know yet what is the period for answering the request from the data subjects, because this requirement would be in the executive regulations that are not yet published. And also in certain situations, those support people would probably need to consult with legal and DPO team, because they know the law, they understand the limits of the rights, and some cases, some situations might be tricky. And in those cases, you need someone in the company that is able to analyze the law, to say whether we have to comply with this requirement. And similar role being as first contact for data subjects is in similar positions are sales and HR. So sales works with your customers' personal data, HR works with your candidates and employees' personal data. So they need to be able to fulfill the requests, the simple requests from the data subjects, and they need to understand, okay, we have a person which is DPO and in support team that would be able to help me if I'm not sure. For instance, some appraisals information should not be shared with data subjects because it might harm other individuals. So for those situations, the DPO and legal team should be consulted. Risk assessment. Actually, risk assessment is a new requirement. It started, the trend started in 2016 with the GDPR and with the implementation of the GDPR. And usually risk assessments are conducted by the team of the business owner or the process owner and DPO. So I would say that the basic understanding of the process would be needed from every employee in the company, but especially this risk assessment understanding would be required from IT information security team, because they would be involved into the DPIA, and from at least one representative of every department on the medium level. So I don't put this medium charged icon to every cell, because it's not all employees of this department know all the staff of marketing HR who would be required to understand this topic, but rather one representative that would be delegated to this risk assessment sessions. And international data transfer. It's pure legal and IT security topic. So I'm putting those fully charged icons into their cells. We need to instruct, to tell our employees to be very cautious with using cloud solutions, cloud servers, cloud services, SaaS services, especially when they upload some personal data to those services. They need to understand, okay, that sharing this information with some company would require actually controller processor relations to be documented and international data transfer rules. But usually it comes as an internal rule in our internal data protection policy. So when we write this rule down, then the reason why the rule exists is not, we don't have to explain them the reason why the rule exists, why they should go through the process of approval of this service approval, but but those two rules about international data transfer and controller processor relations would probably would initiate this kind of requirement from every employee to consult or to pass this information about a new service, a new tool used for using processing personal data to some officer in your company. So basically, you can see this is the agenda of training all your staff about data privacy issues, data privacy requirements, and the most popular professions, the most popular departments from the data protection standpoint are the legal and DPO and IT and information security people. So these are the major audience of our training, but companies that do a lot of sales, especially B2B sales, and a lot of recruitment, they usually send the representatives of those departments to our classes. I see the question concerning is the data governance involved here? Thanks for this question. Yeah, data governance and the requirement of the requirements and controls related to data governance are included into the training, but not this one that we are discussing, not in data privacy professional, but rather the overall DPO training. So we would need to extend this program to the topics of drafting the policies, to the topics of building the process, to the topics of measuring the effectiveness of our process, monitoring and conducting audits. And those topics are part of the next program, of the next course, which is managerial module, after which you are getting DPO certificate. So let's speak about the certifications, those certificates, and I must say that there is a standard in the area when we divide all privacy-related topics into three major domains. The first domain is the legal or privacy professional domain. It's understanding of rules of personal data protection, understanding how the system of personal data protection should work. And the second domain would be an answer to the question, how can we build such system in our company? So it's supporting and introduction of personal data protection system in the company, which is a managerial part, which is also included in our DPO course. So and the third domain is about development of the systems in accordance with privacy by design principles and some information security related topics. So there are three international certifications in this area, and one of our organizations in European Union, DPO Europe, GmbH, is a provider of the training for such certifications. And if you have questions about getting such international certifications that would cover not just the UAE, but also European and other laws, please contact us and Craig will help you. But since we are discussing the UAE part, I will focus only on the UAE part. So right now we have this course, which is called UAE DPO course, that includes the professional and managerial part. But it's also possible for legal professionals that don't need to build the processes in their companies, if you hire external consultants, data privacy consultants who would do this process building part, then it's possible for you to take only this first part, which is professional course, as a 3-day course without going to the managerial module, which would be required for getting a DPO certification. Yeah, Craig, would you like to add something about the international certification?
It's just a general comment. In general, I've been in the UAE since 2004, and I think it's essential that data privacy or the federal law has been implemented. And I think it really adds value to every single organization within the UAE. Why? It adds trust between your clients and your organization. And that's the key to the whole process of data privacy. Your clients will trust you with their information. Now, the UAE is known as the Switzerland, the new Switzerland of the world. There are over 200 nationalities within the UAE. You can envisage the amount of data transfer, be it internally or externally within the the United Arab Emirates. It is extensive. And this includes, I think, close to all the industries within the UAE are automatically touched by data privacy. Sergey has explained very clearly in the matrix on your right-hand side there on the screen, where it affects close to every single department within a company. If you employ 3 or 4 people, it doesn't mean that you process 2 or 3 people's data. It could be millions of people's of data, be one in the financial center, recruitment. It clearly is an essential form of training that every single organization should have, from the most junior to the most senior. Just to give a bit of a summary of the courses which both Nadia and ourselves present within the UAE, we have focused on making it a 3-day intensive course, the DPP course, Data Privacy Professional. It's a 3-day course. It takes 6 hours of training, 9 o'clock in the morning, a 2-hour lunch, plus another 3 hours, 5 o'clock in the afternoon, your staff are back at the office. So we are not taking your staff away from your organization. All we need is 3 days training to train them according to the Data Privacy Professional course. The follow-up course to that is the managerial course, which we've identified as the Data Privacy Officer, is actually a Data Privacy Manager's course, exactly what Sergey has referred to. And for an organization to be made aware, all our staff within the organization, there are so many retail outlets within the UAE currently. You go and pop in there, you buy any form of electronic wear. They ask you all the information starting back to where you were born. Too much information is being requested. It's essential that all your staff are educated. And this we support in the sense that we have a data privacy aware course. I just give you an example. Were your company to have 1,000 staff, we will come to your company, Nadia and Data Privacy Group, and we will provide a data privacy awareness course. We can schedule it over a few days. We can do it online. We can do it with multiple companies. We really add value. It's essential that the person who is interacting with all the people and peoples within the UAE are made aware of the importance of data privacy. The biggest advantage which we offer as well from Nadia and Data Privacy Group is that we are flexible. We can tailor make the training according to your specific requirements. The UAE is a microcosmos. Close to all the companies are dealing with international. So it's essential that we not only adhere to UAE, which was today's focus of training, but that we also advise students about the international outreach of data privacy. From my side is I appreciate the way you presented it, Sergey. I've been there in the UAE since 2004. I can clearly see the applicability that it affects every single organization, from buying a vehicle, from buying a laptop, to traveling, every single sector. So that's just a bit of a background to data privacy. I really invite you, pop in on the Nadia webpage, Nadia Training, Nadia Global. You will see all our courses there, all the requirements there, every single aspect. and our trainers have local, international experience, and that's essential. Our trainers talk the talk and they have walked it, and that's very important. That's my few cents just to add value, Sergey.
Yeah, thank you, Craig. So I was showing you on the screen the materials of the course. So we use this tool called Mira to actually, instead of PowerPoint, or instead of this boring PowerPoint slides, we try to divide and express the quite abstract concepts of personal data, of data controller and data processor with the graphics like that. So the whole course is consists of these graphics, of diagrams that allow you to understand the logic, to understand the concept, and be more professional in data privacy. And there are the diagrams that allow you to understand not only the UAE requirements, but also we add GDPR related requirements, because it's we do this comparative analysis, and we understand, we help people to understand the roots of those UAE requirements, because many of the federal law rules come from the GDPR. And since we are specializing not only on the UAE training, but also on the GDPR European training, we understand those rules, and we use the guidelines of the supervisory authorities of the European Union to explain certain concepts, which is very important since we don't have a supervisory authority in the UAE yet established. It will be established soon. It will be issuing the guidelines, but until then, we would need to explain certain rules, and the best way to explain them is by using the international best practices and the guidelines, opinions, and materials that are abundant in the European Union. So we use our GDPR materials at this course, and many people get this additional benefit from this course, the benefit of understanding the GDPR rule.
Just what I wanted to add over there, Sergey, is that's the biggest advantage this course has, is because there are so many companies within the UAE that are representing international companies and brands throughout the whole world. They are all found within the UAE. And for that reason, it's essential to understand what the requirements are in the Americas, in Europe, in the APAC region. It's essential to understand that. And that's a big advantage you have with the Nadia Data Privacy Group training, is we have that exposure and you can see the functionality and the applicability of that.
Yeah, and I mentioned in the beginning that PDPL does not apply to the entities in DIFC and ADGM, but I must say that we included the requirements of ADGM and DIFC into the course. So the course covers not only federal rules, but also ADGM and DIFC rules regarding data privacy. We use the resource at DPO AE. I created this resource. It contains all the documents with the regulations and laws in both on both federal and DFC and ADGM levels. So we try to cover all the needs of all companies that are in the UAE, regardless whether they are in the DIFC free zone or in the mainland. This additional benefit of the GDPR allows people to understand these requirements in the context, or in the global context of best standards, best practices that are usually rooted inside the European Union with the GDPR.
We presented our first, one of our first training sessions approximately a month back for Data Privacy Officer. And I must say compliments to the people who joined that course. We've already trained a few well-known family organization staff within the UAE, and everybody was very happy and content. We provide on-site as well as online training. So that's a big facility that people don't have to travel up and down. Online training is there, but were your company to require that, we can physically come to your location or in any of Nadia's training facilities.
All right, I think we covered all the topics that we promised in this webinar. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact us through the web form on Nadia website during the registration. Maybe you have the questions about this on-site training, or about the dates, or about the materials. Please don't hesitate to contact us. We would be glad to answer those questions, and I'll make sure that the recording of this webinar is also published in YouTube, so you could access and watch it again and share with your colleagues.
Thank you very much, Sergey. Thank you for the time, and thank you for your experience. I always appreciate and listening to the whole process, and I'm very proud of it. So those of you who want to join any of our training next week in the UAE, 21, 22, 23 of November, join us at Nadia, and we guarantee a qualified and international best standard of training. Thank you very much for everybody attending.